Welcome to today's WTA webinar. This is a webinar presented by WTA's Technology Advisory Board on the pros and cons of the LEO Gateway business. My name is Randall Barney. I'm the Director of Certification and Membership for the World Teleport Association. And I'm joined today by Robert Bell, who is the Executive Director for the association. What we do every day is advocate for the interests of teleport operators, as well as promoting the excellence in their operations, their technology, and their business practices. Our webinar today is based on a report that is available on our website of the same title, and we'll be talking about that in just a moment. The Technology Advisory Board was formed to address the rising challenges and opportunities that our leading members feel are really changing the nature of the game. The purpose of the board is to give them guidance. What are the most important advances you need to keep your eye on? What are some of the appropriate technologies for the kind of needs you have? Membership of the advisory board is open to industry patron and leader members. If you want more information on this, send an email to me. After this introduction, we're going to cover some key insights from the published report, and then we'll launch into a discussion with today's panelists. I would also like to thank our industry leader members who make possible our research reports and webinars. They are Eutelsat, Intelsat, Kratos, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and SES. I'll now turn this over to Robert Bell, who will discuss the key takeaways from the report.
Thank you, Randy, and welcome everybody. This is a really fascinating topic for our industry. Because it's not so often that a completely new line of business wanders in the door and offers interesting opportunities to our industry. So we're looking at it very hard together with our members. So the takeaways from this report were several, and I want to start with the first one. If you could put that up on the screen, Randy. LEO operators are coming into this teleport sector, and it's been kind of an interesting story because at first I think they didn't even realize that there was a teleport sector, or in any case, you weren't hearing much about it in terms of our industry, and all of a sudden they got religion. So LEO operators really are now coming to the teleport sector looking for experience, looking for reliability. One executive with one of the LEO companies said to me, look, you've got great high quality real estate. You've got land, you've got power, you've got connectivity, you've got space access, you've got the ability to maintain service. That's really valuable for us. So that's why that has all turned around. Put up the next one, Randy. What so far we're finding is that the smaller operators who are generally providing a slightly better opportunity than the big ones, and it's for the usual reasons, right? Very large companies, it makes sense for them to capitalize infrastructure themselves in many cases. For smaller operators, the idea of having less capital go out the door and increasing their operating expenses is more attractive. I think some of it is also just down to corporate culture. When we talk about the mega constellations, there's one, and it's SpaceX, SpaceLink. It's a company that likes to do things itself. It's just they're part of their cultural ethos. But nonetheless, it seems to be going this way, that if you're in the smaller constellations, and this is not necessarily, by the way, SATCOM, this is also with observation, there seems to be greater opportunity that's accessible to you. Next one, please. Not surprisingly, price is going to be the major issue, right? Because these companies are buying what they think is just, a place that with a view of the sky. And of course, there's a great deal more to it than that. So because they're not as familiar with teleport services and technology as perhaps you are, if you're a teleport operator. And by the way, this is a generalization, obviously doesn't hold true for some of the very, very experienced executives who are out there shopping for teleport space. But nonetheless, these companies have very complex needs. They've got very specific requirements, and they don't always understand what it takes from the teleport operation to deliver on that high reliability at a low maintenance cost. And so there's an education that needs to go on, and that's part of the selling process with any newish market. Next one. LEO customers are, if there's one of the questions that we asked in our report was the question of value added. Teleport operators long ago stopped being able to make a profit by just offering fundamental shared infrastructure, pointing a dish at the sky on behalf of a customer. They have been in a search for new value added ever since, and very successfully. Well, the value added for this market seems to be metrics. It seems to be artificial intelligence for scheduling, for forecasting, cloud and virtual services, all the new stuff in our industry. And that seems to be giving a slight advantage to the companies that just basically whose infrastructure is newer, or who have done a lot of investment in it to make sure that it is up to date, with today's demands. So that's an important competitive advantage if you can bring that to market. And finally, the business case here is still evolving, right? What if you actually look at what we have? We've got some LEO spacecraft in orbit. We have one company delivering service with about 12% of the total network it plans to have up in the sky. It's only available in limited areas, so we don't really know yet how this market's going to evolve, and that risk factor has to be in the back of everybody's minds who is serving it, as well as for the LEO operators themselves. So that's a very brisk run through our report's major findings, but there's a lot of other very, very valuable detail in there. So if you are a WTA member, I definitely recommend you go to our site and download it, because it's free to you. And if you're not a member, you can take a look at purchasing it for your own use. So thank you. Let's move on to talk to the people who actually know about this topic in great detail. And they are Martin Coughlin, who's Business Development Director at Satellite and Media Services at Telstra, the Australian telco, but also, of course, a significant satellite services provider. Tony Russell, who's President of the Antenna Solutions Group at Kratos Defense and Security, longtime expert and practitioner of the art and science of creating antennas that actually work and deliver tremendous service. And finally, Mike Carey. If you could go back there, Randy, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Mike Carey, who's co-founder and chief strategy officer at Atlas Space Operations. So, gentlemen, welcome to our webinar. And so let's get started. I want to ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and their companies as they relate to today's topic. So, Marty, let's start with you.
Okay, well, thanks for the introduction, Robert. It was a great introduction about your report, of which I've read a couple times. So excellent. Yeah, so I'm Martin Coughlin, and I'm the Business Development Director here at Telstra International. Essentially, I look after Telstra's satellite business here in the US. So a little bit about just the history of Telstra. We're obviously the incumbent telco of Australia, and we've been in the teleport business for a long time, probably 50 plus years or so, longer than I've been in the industry. So I wasn't there on day one. But we started off in voice, like a lot of the telco teleports would have, and moved into more expanded services such as video, and then to data services. And then in recent times, we've been involved with hosting of other operators, mostly GEO, over the last few years, of hosting some of their electronics for their services. And we're currently moving into LEO. So it's been a long journey, and it looks like it will continue for quite some time. So I'm very happy to be part of the panel and look forward to a good discussion here today.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you.
Let's turn to Tony Russell and get some background on him. Tony?
All right. Thank you, Robert. My name's Tony Russell. As Robert mentioned, I'm the president of the Kratos Antenna Solutions business. This is a business whose history dates back through many different tentacles back to the early Andrew Satcom antenna business back in the 70s. So there's a very long and rich history there. We specialize today in antennas and antenna systems up to and including fully integrated gateways. These antennas and antenna systems are based on parabolic antennas. Our core competency is in the sort of 2.5 to 18 meter range, primarily for satellite communications. So about 85% of our business is for Satcom. And then the rest of the business is air traffic control, meteorological and HF antennas. And the business operates out of the US, Canada, and the UK. Our parent, however, is even more entrenched in SATCOM, particularly on the M&C side, the C2 side. And in fact, today, 80% of commercial operators around the world rely on Kratos products of some description or another. So we're heavily invested in SATCOM.
That is quite a statistic, but I'm not surprised because I know a lot of the people there. So thank you. Last but not least is Mike Carey from Atlas Space Operations. Mike, can you give some background on you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Mike Carey, Chief Strategy Officer and one of the 4 co-founders of Atlas Space Operations. I have a 34-year career history in the United States Air Force, almost exclusively in space operations, and was part of founding Atlas in 2015 in an effort to address the expanding LEO market and knowing that the existing infrastructure would have challenges in scaling and that it was not software based, it was more telephonic setup. And so what we've been doing for the last 7 years is developing the Freedom platform, which is our software architecture that allows us to integrate not only our antennas, but anybody else's antennas into a greater confederated network and enabling teleport operators to participate in this growth in the LEO market by leveraging their investment that already exists and bringing them into an opportunity to address the X and S and KA LEO market predominantly. We operate 13 antennas, teleports ourselves, and then we participate integrating other people's antennas to expand that network capability. And we're a young company. You know, we don't have the pedigree of Telstra Kratos. 7 years. We celebrated our 7 years in June last month, and we're about a 40-person company. Really enjoying the growth that has been exhibited. And as you said, Robert, earlier on, you know, the business case for some of these is still being discovered. So it's a sporty operation, but we're really having a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. You can do all this and have fun too. That's a great thing. Yeah, we actually did a report and webinar, I can't remember, it was last year, I think, on this new business model that Atlas represents along with several other companies. And it's really quite fascinating in terms of creating, again, new opportunities for traditional teleport operators, but also an expansion of service for customers. But that's not our topic today. So let's just set the trend, if you will, or get, you know, make sure everybody's on the same page about what we're talking about. What, in your view, is today's growth trend for these gateways serving LEO constellation operators? And if you are able to speak to it, we talk about the fact that it's not just SATCOM, it's also Earth observation, which has not really been a traditional teleport market, and yet is a set of LEO constellations from the get-go. So, Mike, why don't we just start with you since you spoke last?
So, growth trends to me indicate a couple of different paths, right? So there's gateway services to support constellations that are of significance and, you know, maybe greater than 20 spacecraft. But then there's also the smaller scale operation which requires support, and the infrastructure required for both is different, right? It demands a different data backhaul for Earth observation data versus the TT&C. It requires a different frequency band typically, and also a different number of apparatus. One of the challenges is when you want to scale, right? If you have to put up an antenna to serve a LEO customer, how much capability will you get out of that antenna before you have to invest in the next one? And so thinking about latency and meeting data requirements for customers, satellite flyers, satellite owner operators, who are, it sounds similar, but each one's unique. And they don't want to buy their own ground network, right? They want to invest, they want to pay for a service, they don't want to invest in the capability. So the business case for the teleport is really complex in that you have to judge when best to invest in the infrastructure, but don't be behind the curve or you'll just miss out on an entire opportunity. And so the trends that I see are gateway versus not a generic, but a common platform that multiple users can fly through, and in bands that are approved both within obviously ITU and local communication authorities. Those become kind of challenging to navigate.
Well, how unusual is that for the teleport business? We're always the plumbers who have to make the pipes fit, even though they weren't designed that way.
Right.
Tony, let's turn to you, because I know that LEO gateways went from being something new a few years ago to something that's not by any means a small part of your business. What do you see the growth trends out there as?
Well, I think it's definitely strong growth. People estimate anywhere from 15 to 30% annual growth for the next several years, and I think that's true. I mean, there's the obvious drivers like the demand for more communications bandwidth and greater and greater resolution imagery around the world. So I think the fundamental drivers are there, and we also see an enormous number of satellites get launched over the last few years. So clearly the drivers for the gateways are present and are real. From our perspective, we think the Earth observation is the smaller part of the growth in terms of particularly the hardware and certainly from the antenna side, largely because virtualization products have allowed the much more efficient use of a gateway. So if you can, for the Earth observation market, if you can connect to a satellite, download the data, and then as it disappears over the horizon, reconfigure your gateway such that you can now communicate with the next satellite, do it with software switches rather than hardware changes, then all of a sudden your effectiveness of the antenna is increased dramatically. So we see less hardware growth in the Earth observation on the ground, more software growth for the virtualization. On the SATCOM side of it, we see perhaps the opposite, where more hardware growth, because that hardware tends to be bespoke and customized to that system. And with the very large number of satellites, they're going to be in constant use on the same system. So we think the greater growth actually comes out of the communications market, and that's probably it's going to get fueled again by the government need for greater resilience. Smaller assets of lower capacity that can withstand outages or attacks or whatever. So we see the comms as driving most of the hardware growth on the ground.
It's interesting. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but of course, who sees that growth is indeterminate, of course, because some of the mega constellations, may bring a lot of it in-house.
Right. No, it's an interesting point I hadn't heard before, which is that the more we have small assets all whizzing around in the sky, fundamentally, the more vital that complex ground segment becomes. Interesting. Marty, what's your view on our growth trends at the moment? You're muted at the moment.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, from my perspective, there's probably Marty's perspective and Telstra's perspective. So we'll start with Marty's perspective. I like both Mike's a business model, because he probably needs locations on the ground, potentially in Australia. And I would tend to agree with Tony that we see a lot of the probably larger growth in the SATCOMs area with the mega constellations. So me looking after the US market, both of those mega constellations and the companies like Mike exist and are potentially customers of mine. So that's Marty's point of view. We like all of that. From Telstra's point of view, my colleagues, They like the aspect that all of this needs ground connectivity. So every ground station needs to plug in somewhere. So our wholesale group loves the fact that SATCOM as well as ground observation is growing. So that's probably more the corporate answer of why we like these entities. And then there's also the aspect of Telstra as a potential customer to these SATCOM groups. So we have a mobile business, we have an enterprise business. So we're also looking very hard at how do we integrate these technologies into our mobile business and our enterprise business to make them more vibrant and resilient in the markets. So we're looking at satellite from many different angles at this point, and all of them seem to be positive at this point.
Well, exactly. Satellite touches everything, even though most people don't realize that. Okay, so let's just together here collaboratively just specify, what are the technical and facility requirements that LEO operators are coming to our ground station, our ground segment with, and saying, here's the things I have to have. Marty, I know that Telstra is actually building some facilities for LEO operators. So what are their must-haves? Oops, you're muted again, which I really appreciate. It's a very polite thing to do, but
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the requirements are somewhat similar. We get some of the LEO operators, for example, who can use larger or higher look angles, which makes it a little easier on tree trimmings and things of this sort. Most of the Earth observation guys want to go down to the horizon if you'll give it to them, because they obviously want the most viewpoint, the most view of the sky. And then the other thing too is the SATCOM guys will typically need larger pipes for connectivity from a teleport perspective. So that's another aspect. I think that's important, that there's definitely larger connectivity required, on the SATCOM piece.
So what's
and then of course,
sorry, what's large? What's larger? Just can you put some numbers next to
oh
that?
well, yeah. So just to put in perspective, I think most of the mega fleet operators are up to 100 gigabit connections, and that'll probably even go higher because you start aggregating 10 or 12 or 20 antennas at one location, it gets very large. And if you even go thinking more into the future, when these move to Q and V band, in higher modulation, the throughputs will be even higher. But look, even in the Earth observation, we're moving into Ka band, and those guys are moving into the gigabit connectivity as well. So I think that's important. Nobody wants to pay for running large pipes. They want to go into a place where those pipes exist. And I think a lot of teleport operators, frankly, have bought or made the investment in those pipes. You don't have to be a telco. If you own properties that have, big data connections, that's what you said, that's prime real estate. And then of course it's the people, right? Trained staff that teleports is always going to be a big advantage. And I think that would be a really good attractor to bring these, Earth observation, IoT players, LEO mega fleets into your facilities, or even help them in a country build out their facilities. Nothing says, because sometimes of sovereign ownership and things of this sort, you being the incumbent in a country, you're already in, and that's a great spot to be in. So I think that's what they're looking for mostly.
So Tony, what about the antennas? Every time I think of LEO, I get this picture of these large scale antenna parabolics, just moving around like mad, following satellites. But I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, well, we try and make them move around less mad and more predictable, but not all the time. Yeah, I think from the antenna perspective, Robert, yeah, it's a major issue. The most obvious feature of any LEO is that, of course, it is moving in the sky, and the time that you get to watch it is only maybe 20 minutes. So these antennas then will have to have full motion capability. They'll need to be able to acquire a satellite, track it until it goes down to the other horizon, and then reacquire on another satellite. And so, for example, a customer of ours has about 40 of our antennas or so, report that they're doing 30 to 50,000 passes a month over those bits of hardware. So these things have to be agile, but above all, they've got to be very, very reliable. Another feature of the the ground stations is going to be driven by the nature of the polar orbits that a lot of the LEOs take. So for Earth observation, for example, you might say a satellite might see any given place on the Earth once or possibly twice a day, but they'll pass over the poles typically 14 times a day, that sort of number. And so that's the best vantage point to download central data gathering or uploading TT&C commands, etc. So another feature of the ground station will be needing to have facilities in the polar regions. So places like Svalbard come to mind as good examples.
Right, exactly. I was just about saying, now you've just explained KSAT's business. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, how about you? Now, of course, you're going to bring a software slant to this, which I think is pretty critical, because this is a hugely software-driven business.
So I first of all, I agree with what Tony said about the key for polar orbits is Arctic, which is why we put our ground station in Alaska, Reykjavik, formerly known as Barrow, for exactly the same reason, is because you've got certain clientele that can't use Svalbard and due to treaty encumbrances and whatnot. So making sure we're treaty compliant with our customers is necessary in all countries, and particularly the U.S. where we're from. And so what do you need at a ground station? Obviously security is critical, and sometimes security in remote areas is far less of a challenge. With the reindeer in Finland are not a security challenge, right? But we've got places that are greenfield that we built that are not on teleports. Teleports are really advantageous in that they come inherently with security, with power, with all of the utilities and the civil works that lend themselves to be useful in the LEO market. Some of the challenges are obscura, and Martin addressed maybe tree trimming and whatnot, but also you can put a geostationary teleport, in a community that has, as long as you've got visibility, it's fine, but you might not likely have the right line of sight 360, as has been stated before. So some real fundamentals are key in the LEO market. And so the software really allows the security piece. We're really keen on being tight with our NIST standards and FedRAMP security for ensuring our cybersecurity and penetration resistance, if you will, is very, very important to us. Scalability is critical. And then ease of onboarding. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was the hardware stack is becoming virtualized. Tony was talking about that. We've created, and we believe it's necessary to adapt so many different combinations of spacecraft configurations, the ground configuration. It has to be software coded, or you'll just have endless racks of equipment. And so we've solved that in the software solution within Freedom. It's a mixed modem capability. It's a translator, so that you don't care what the spacecraft modem configuration is. You can match a ground configuration, a multitude of modems. And so that's part of our secret sauce. So what I think the teleport requires really when we've got customers, we're citing constantly, is the fundamentals, which is elbow room, obscura, security, power, and utilities. And then I think what's really necessary is the business mindset of the teleport operator to see the opportunity, because it's not just the poles for polar orbiting spacecraft. You can cut down latency by having mid-latitude teleport stations. You might only get 3 passes a day, but if you have 5 teleports mid-latitude to augment or even replace a polar station, you can get your data down, frankly, faster and more, you'll get it every time over the poles. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But if there's an outage or there's contention for resources, you might pick it up in Guam. You might pick it up in Western Australia. You might pick it up in Ararua or whatever. We've got opportunities, and I think you need to think beyond. I think the future of teleports is connecting, creating the opportunity for 1,200 teleports to serve the LEO market and participate in that economy.
It's really interesting. Thank you. Tony, I want to come back to you because I want to sort of look a little bit forward in terms of antenna technology, right? I mean, we're still in this world where we're trying to perfect the electronically steered antenna in terms of cost, in terms of power consumption, in terms of heat production, in terms of all those things. The parabolic is, gosh, it works, and we keep getting better and better. Looking forward for your company, what are you seeing in terms of this LEO market, for your roadmap going ahead?
Well, today we still focus on parabolics. In terms of how they've developed to suit the LEO market, we have put quite a bit of effort into technologies that will allow the greatest tracking arc. So, for example, the LEO systems that we ship today, typically in the range of 3.5 meters, can acquire a satellite as low as 5 degrees elevation. And when you're taking a large structure like that and moving it from sort of +5 degrees all the way around to 5 degrees down at the next horizon, there's a lot of weight. There's a lot of mechanics to deal with. So we've developed, first of all, very rigid assemblies that can take that span of motion. We've also developed a special acquisition aids. So, when a satellite comes up, you could just be using ephemeris tracking, or you could be using full closed loop tracking. So we've been able to sort of perfect a very, very high acquisition accuracy at very low elevations. Some of those include active technologies like CONSCAN. CONSCAN's been around for a long time, but for our LEO antennas, we've developed it with a mutating feed where the feed horn itself acts as the CONSCAN element. So very, very light, very low maintenance, very long longevity. So we've been concentrating on that. But in terms of the future roadmap, we're keeping a very close eye on phased arrays, as you mentioned. So phased arrays could unlock the potential of all the commercial LEO operations by providing, in the end, low-cost user terminals. So we see that technology as, first of all, very complementary from the point of view as an enabling technology for mass rollout of these LEO comms systems, and then ultimately maybe for the large capacity gateways as well. But I think the industry talks about all the potential advantages like no moving parts, multi-beam capability, potential of very low cost terminals. But I worry that we're a little bit further away from achieving that than perhaps the world thinks. Phased arrays as pure elements often don't have a greater scanning range as you might think. So if you look at the development of radar systems, which of course in several decades of development, and there's some very impressive phased array radar systems out there, most of them can only work from about 30 degrees elevation. So compared to what we're aiming at with a parabolic of 5 degrees. And of course, what happens is that with a phased array, as you go to low elevations, that's when they become least efficient. They're best when they're pointing normal to the surface. But that's exactly the time when you're at low elevations that you want the multi-beam capability, so you can do the make or break feature that's so critical to LEOs. So, so I'm confident that the drivers are there for the technology to improve, but you probably end up with a hybrid system, a phased array mounted on some kind of mechanical structure to give you the sort of 5 degrees elevation and upwards. So I think a good example of that is perhaps the SpaceX user terminal, where you do have a combination of mechanical and electronically steered, or even ThinCom, where successful antenna, but it's a hybrid antenna.
Interesting. Interesting. Just can't get away from those motors, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's turn back to our service providers, because one of course the things that's always is we want to talk about is the business side of this. So to the extent that you can talk about this in public, how is a gateway contract typically structured in terms of paying for any necessary capital expense, the SLAs, and just initial contract terms and renewals that you can expect from a LEO operator of some kind? Mike, why don't we ask you that question first?
Thanks, Robert. There's not a bus that you threw me under, but that's a loaded question. So,
a very small bus. Very small bus.
Okay. No, I mean, it's a complex question because everyone's different, and we try to accommodate everyone's unique needs with a standard business model, if you will. And so there's probably 3 categories, if you will. When we think about the CapEx required for a new mission, I mean, that's not a small investment or a small decision, right? And so depending on the anticipated use of the client, we may negotiate a portion of CapEx and imagine that over some number of years that will be amortized and covered by client use. There's a model that we've been using recently that teleport operators have been approaching us, and they want to buy our software, integrate into the Freedom Network to make their infrastructure available to a broader network. And in that case, we find that there's more maneuver room on how you structure the deal with the teleport. And the compelling argument is made compelling by an on-orbit customer. The notional agreement, let's say Martin and I come up with a great Telstra solution in Darwin or something, I don't know. And hey, great. So Atlas wants to come to the teleport. Darwin, we're here to hook you up. Look at this great spots, great visibility, everything you need. And I go, that's wonderful. I want to be here as soon as I have a customer, right? And so I need to line up enough customer to warrant the investment, and then it has to be beneficial, obviously, to Telstra as well as Atlas. And so that's where the model of CapEx, who's gonna bear that, and how's that gonna play out over monthly recurring revenues, right? And so we have a couple of different models that we like to apply, and it all depends on the approach of the teleport, and it's juxtaposed to that of the customer. And so.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. It makes me think of a report we did years ago about buying and selling teleports, and there's a very simple rule of thumb, which is, well, if you've got all you got is hardware, you're basically just you're having a yard sale. But if you've got customers, it's a different discussion. Marty, how about you? From your point of view, which is a little bit different, going to be a little bit different from Mike's. What's the typical structure, if there is such a thing as a typical structure for the contract?
Yeah, well, it's actually not that different. So just to get off topic a bit with our geo business, I mean, we build KU band antennas every year, or at least the past few years. The maritime business got very hot. We realized we didn't have enough KU band assets, and we were simply almost building and they'll come, because we just needed, our customers kept saying, you need to get us on more satellites. You guys have a great teleport, great location. You don't have enough access to KU band. So a lot of our legacy was C-band. So we made the investment because we understood the market. We had customers who were driving, and we stood it up, and we basically financed these antennas that they paid off handsomely. I think one of the problems maybe in the new world is we just don't know enough about start to invest in, SX band antennas or these LEO antennas that we're describing. So I think that's where Mike and I could talk more about it and get a better understanding about what the market's like. Telstra's a big company. We amortize, we do all kinds of creative financing and things for the right deal. So we're very open to that kind of exploration. In terms of the mega fleets, because they're using their assets 100% of the time, there's really no sharing involved. I mean, OneWeb, SpaceX, Amazon, they're all going to use their stuff 100% of the time. So in that way, there's really no sort of way to finance it for them. I mean, they'll come in and bring their own kit. So that's not really much there. The only other options or models I could see is we haven't had any kind of revenue sharing aspects with anybody. So I haven't had anybody really come to me and say, hey, could we work out a deal where maybe you finance some hardware, we share some revenue? Maybe that's an option. We have seen the pay or the take or play model. So take or pay model. So some of the operators say, hey, we'll set up on your property if you'll use our service. And then if you don't use it, you're going to pay for it anyway. So that kind of model has been floated to us. But look, we're all ears. If we can do something that makes sense, then yeah, we'll certainly do it. So a little insight into how we operate and what we've seen.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's always tough to lift the kimono, but you did it just enough to show the ankle there. I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about value added. Because as I said at the beginning, value added is ultimately what teleports are selling. The hardware's, quote unquote, a commodity, although Tony can certainly protest that it's extremely high quality, heavily engineered, beautiful commodity. The connectivity on the ground is a commodity. All these things are commodity. What ends up adding value is something else. Software, in Mike's case, is certainly one of those value addeds. But in your experience, and this is a question for all three of you, what are the value addeds that have appeal to the LEO operator, whether they're in SATCOM or in Earth observation? And gosh, I guess we'll start with Mike.
So what we're finding is what our clients are really interested in is the metrics that we generate, which allows for a smarter and easier interaction with scheduling and conflicting and then predicting. We've been collecting, we've got billions of data points now that help inform our not just our modeling, but our actual operations. And so with a GUI that an onboarded customer can use that allows them to forecast out their operations, but in real time gives them feedback how the satellite path is going, what the power levels are, how things are performing. If there's an issue, they're alerted immediately. And then there's a lot of data for analysis. We've actually had the customer troubleshoot spacecraft anomaly using ground-based data. And so that type of service or value-added benefit to a software platform doesn't just configure or rapidly reconfigure equipment to take the path successfully, but also provides a depth of information that helps improve both operations, but also future activities for both ground station and spacecraft owner operator. The other thing that we're finding is that the single API, the means by which you integrate, if you can simplify, which we've done, simplify the onboarding and integration of a spacecraft customer so that once you're on the platform, you get access to all of the antennas within the network as opposed to each requiring its own engineering effort. That is a value. There's less time and therefore more money goes back into what the customer is interested in as opposed to going through the machinations of integration. So simplifying integration and the metrics and the machine level, the machine learning that helps us provide an AI based machine for customers, really where they find the value.
It's really fascinating. It's software is eating the world, as Mark Andreessen said. Tony, I don't know, this may not be in your wheelhouse, but I'd be curious if you have any comments about what, where the value added is that you've been seeing out in the marketplace.
Yeah, well, certainly from the Kratos perspective, it's all about the support software for these systems. We're heavily entrenched in the software support of the system. So, for instance, our Compass M&C system, or our SpectralNet system that allows you to take transport digitized RF over IP networks, whether they're private or public. So we think that being able to tie all these things in is really important, because ultimately, if you're going to use the gateway effectively, you need to be able to get away from long lead time hardware configurations of gateways and go more to a digital software defined gateway. And so we've made a lot of investment and a lot of progress with that. And just a couple of months ago, we launched our open space product, which we think is the most comprehensive suite of virtualization products available today. And so that's proving to be of great interest to everybody. So you can sit at your desktop somewhere in the world and reconfigure in a matter of a couple of minutes a gateway for a new service. So that really opens up, either for the Earth observation, the more efficient use of the antennas that we talked about before, or it really opens up the ground station as a service market. So that's where we see our biggest value-added contributor to the ground station.
And virtualization is a huge thing. I know Kratos is also really, I guess, was one of the leading organizations founding this Diffie Alliance to drive forward those standards. It's just terrific. I spent a lot of time with Stuart Dowdridge, your colleague, and you guys are doing fantastic work. Marty, to you, the value added that you at Telstra can provide to a LEO operator beyond this, the hardware and such.
Right. Well, it's probably like the other guys are saying. It's really probably not in the teleport area. So the one thing about we're dealing with Telstra is it'll probably be a different conversation than if you were just talking to another teleport operator. So you're going to talk with Telstra, and we run a very large network, whether it be through the Pacific and through Australia, and we have products like kind of almost like what Tony was referring to, where we can dial up circuits and dial them down, and you can do them on your own. We have something called the Telstra Programmable Network. So even in the case of Mike's business, where he needed a 100 meg circuit for 10 minutes, you could literally dial up 100 meg for 10 minutes and dial it down. So those kind of features are now appearing in the in the telco space. And I guess one thing also about Telstra is, I've been in the satellite business, for 30 plus years, and you tend to find in satellite companies, you have a lot of, satellite designers and rocket science guys, but you don't really have network guys. Usually there's one guy. You say, okay, you want to talk about network, you go talk to this guy. So I think we, in that sense, can bring a lot more to the table. And I'd encourage other, teleport operators to, partner with some telcos, and you may find that you can bring some added value, to guys like Mike and those kinds of companies. I'm not from the telco world, and as you can probably tell, I never thought I'd work for a telco, but I find we can deliver pretty good value as a telco to the satellite community. So
absolutely. No,
hopefully my boss will like that.
He will. I'm right now writing the scope for a report called how to win business from a telco. So I'm sure we'll be talking. Okay, we're coming up. We got about 9 minutes left. And I want to squeeze in 2 questions. One of them is, of course, about the potential. Smart business people will always keep a sharp eye on the upside, but of course also on the downside. So, what are some of the risks that you see in this marketplace as you look at investment, as you look at service deployment, that we just, to be realistic, we need to keep in mind? Marty, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, this is my favorite question. In fact, I kind of went online before the question to figure out or to just look up some businesses that never followed through. And, I saw like AOL and maybe the old Yahoo and some old search engines that kind of died before Google took over. And then I thought about the, automotive industry. I thought about the airline industry. And that's where all this LEO is going to go. In 20 years, it's going to look a lot different. SpaceX will be privatized and it'll be sold, and who knows what happens with all the others. So I think you have to keep that, kind of view that the industry is going to evolve, it's going to change. And what you're seeing today is, the very, very early days. So, in 20, 30 years, it's going to look so much different with laser comms and hosting in space and all kinds of other things going on. So anyway, now is any of that stuff going to work? We have no idea. We don't even know if the stuff they're launching today is going to work. We just went through a bad spell, over COVID with some bankruptcies, of which I had several customers. So hopefully we're ahead of those dark days, but we're all keeping an eye on everything, I would say, from our perspective.
Everything all at once. I think there's a movie about that.
Yeah.
Tony, how about you? What are you seeing as some of the risks as you go forward in this marketplace?
Well, I think the most obvious thing is you're combining heavy capital costs with very high technology.
Right.
And so, will the service justify the cost? So in certain applications, where there is no other service, and really high latitudes or whatever, or if you really put a premium on the low latency, then maybe it does. But if the cost of delivery doesn't get down to being competitive with the GEO system, you still have 90% of the world's population that's happy with the GEOs. So I think that's the real key. How can you deliver it? Northern Skies Research came out with a generic costing tool for communication systems, and I watched their demonstration webinar a few months ago, and it had some fairly surprising results, I think, in terms of the projected costs of delivering bandwidth using LEO systems. So clearly a lot of work has to be done to make it effective. The other two issues, of course, is that how many LEO communication systems can the market support? There's a lot of proposals out there, and can they all be successful? I think possibly not. Maybe it's one, maybe it's two. And then another short-term hurdle, I think, is the regulatory framework. You're putting up potentially tens of thousands of satellites into quite densely packed orbits with no uniform global regulatory framework. So I think you got great opportunity, but there are still real challenges.
Mike, how about you?
Well, you hit on some really good ones there, and I'll just add to the pile, right? And so here we are in this business and pretty excited about it and optimistic. But one of the challenges that I see, the riskier sides, is when customers start talking about exotic bands, right? So when we first started, SNX is tried and true for Earth observation, and it's kind of where you're at. And all the X-band guys, or a lot of the X-band guys, said, hey, we moved to KA. And I'm just now seeing that shift. 7 years ago, they said they're making the change. But right now, he's trying to get more data down in the same finite scope of a 8.3 minute pass, right? How many modulation schemes can I come up with, and what bands can I come in? So when you hear, V and W, you're going to go, okay, that's a serious pointing challenge. And there's challenges with that, right? But that's an infrastructure cost, and optical. It's like that's not cheap business. And so if you want to turn the industry by being first with a W band network, have at it. That's a high risk maneuver in my mind, because the business case hasn't closed on that, and it's not an irrelevant investment. So And then the cross-link issue, how are we going to get data down? The Earth will, in the next few years, the Earth is being sensed and observed more than ever before. I remember 20 years ago, General Pete Warden said, hey, we need to put up enough small satellites so we can monitor the Earth 24/7. And everybody thought it was crazy. I mean, it maybe is, but that wasn't why. And so now we've got all these spacecraft that are monitoring Earth, but what's the business case for all that, right? And how many more? So there's an amalgamation. The industry is, there's a lot of M&A going on. It was perturbated by COVID and the economy as well. But that I see as trending for the future. I see an amalgamation of like industries coming together to be more efficient, more business driven, and the risk of that to me is a conservatism that doesn't lead turn the future. And so someone's going to leapfrog it and come out on top with the right answer for not just ground infrastructure, but for space infrastructure that's acceptable by the regulatory environment that does have authority, whether people like to think so or not. And then it's up to us to figure out how, like you said, Robert, the plumbers of the world, how am I going to get those pipes to fit? How do I get the data to the people? And I think it's going to be a hybrid solution of all those things we already know about, right? It's going to be ground-based, it's going to be submarine-based, it's going to be space-based, and teleports are a central part of that solution and always will be, I believe.
All right, that's the kind of thing I like to hear. I want to just finish by asking a question that came from our listeners, and I want a really short answer, which is, okay, so SATCOM is about 1% of global telecom in terms of its revenue model. And the question is LEO going to change that? Is LEO going to be the thing that kicks us to 2 or 3%, which would, double or triple the market that we serve and yet still be pretty small? Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to put some money down on that? Marty, what do you think? Is it going to just?
I'll give you the 15-second answer. I was talking to one of the companies, and I think we've spoken about this, that's doing the 5G release 17, end-to-end non-terrestrial networks for 5G. And they said if they could capture 1% of the mobility market currently, of the 5G or projected mobility market, it would increase the satellite overall revenue, by 2 or 3 fold. So there's a massive opportunity in that particular technology with integrating into 5G to just capture a very, very small percentage. Now, I didn't check them on their calculations, but let's assume, they're on the skies and that's what they're shooting for. So I think,
maybe
there is some.
So there's a maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony, how about you? What's your call on that?
I would say, yeah, most certainly. I think, every force we see is pushing towards greater bandwidth capability, greater data capability. So yeah, I think it's certainly a major avenue for growth.
Fantastic, Mike. Last word to you.
I think the answer is yes, but my ignorance going to play out here. I see it as a mesh network being developed, which space has a resilience and persistence piece to play. I don't see it, competing effectively with the broad.
Oh yeah. I don't think they're talking about competing. I think, but you just said something really important, which is it's a mesh network. It's going to increase
complementary. And I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know how to figure out the percentage of that. I don't do math well.
That has to bring us to the end. This has been a fascinating discussion. So I personally want to thank the three of you for contributing so much to our listeners' understanding. And I want to turn this back over to Randall Barney to bring us home. Randy?
All right, great. Thank you, Robert. And thank you to all our panelists today, Martin Coughlin, Tony Russell, and Mike Carey. Coming up, reports. The next report will be released right before IBC in September. It's Alive, How Innovation Enables Teleport Success in Video Distribution. After that, as Robert mentioned before, we'll have How to Win Business from a Telco. In September, we'll be at IBC. If you'd like to schedule a meeting with Robert or I or a video interview, send me an email. And that is it for today's webinar. Thank you all.